Hello and welcome to Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora, and this is actually December 21st. It is the beautiful winter solstice, and I'm out here in this beautiful sunny field, green grass. There's no snow on the ground where I live, and it's a beautiful, blessed, magnificent sunny day. So again, I'm taking this recording in order to auditorily send you a lifeline of beautiful sunshine and stellar consciousness and information if you happen to be in a place where there are leaden clouds or where it's too cold or difficult to go outside and actually expose yourself to the sun directly. My name is Aurora. For anyone that is new to these broadcasts, I'm a galactic walk-in, and that means that when I am not here in this one-faced, two-armed, two-legged form, I am usually in abstraction. I am an energetic awareness that might look like a big polygon with many colors and lights and sounds being emitted from it, musical, harmonious sounds. And that is what higher dimensional beings look like. We have a third dimensional body in this present format, and we are also moving through time, which is the fourth dimension or a timeline. But we're not just on one timeline. We have access to many timelines. I usually draw it as a time vortex, but you can also think of it as a time plane, like a piece of fabric or cloth, and the warp and the weft are made of woven timelines. And that's not the end of the time structure of reality, because that cloth can be stacked on top of other layers of cloth, creating a time cube, and all of the layers of cloth can interact when an event penetrates through many layers in the same way that a needle sewing thread would penetrate the many layers of physical fabric. So now we can begin to understand how profoundly intertwined the events of our own life are with the events of not only other people, other living things, but other versions of reality. And achieving this multidimensional viewpoint actually helps us to get more freedom. It is just like being able to suddenly see out of the windshield of your car instead of merely driving forward while looking out the rear view mirror at what is in the background. And that is called how we've been doing it up until now, when you can see the past, but you cannot see the future. And that is considered, quote unquote, normal in this time and place. But really what we are experiencing is an aberration, perception that is not supposed to be happening. And all of this is due to the distortion of the human genetic code and the distortion of human perception on Earth's surface. And I make that distinction of Earth's surface because there actually is a contingent or a group of people that are from the era of Atlantis before corruption came into the genome. There are vestiges of that civilization, and Atlantis was not just on one continent, like the continent that sunk beneath the waves, like that Donovan song. It was a global culture. It was sophisticated, it was worldwide, and that's not just on our own planet. This is a culture that was also connected with other space races or civilizations that are off of our planet. So yes, and the way that I want to say, yes, this is shorthand, I know, you're tuning in telepathically and I can hear you all, that yes, there are other beings that live off of the surface of Earth. This is not the only place of consciousness, and that consciousness takes many formats, so it can be in a solid physical body, it can be in a gaseous or cloudy body, it can be in an energy body like an electric zap type of electricity. It can be in the form of plasma, and it can be in the form of, let's call it, higher dimensional state matter that there is not a word for. And it can also be in the form of much, much denser matter that is even denser than what we would call physical matter, and what in physics of this time and place is called a Bose-Einstein condensate. But let's just say that the ladder of awareness, or the spectrum, goes all the way up infinitely and all the way down infinitely, and that these two seemingly polar opposites, total energy and total entropy, are actually both parts of the same system. So this is how I can understand good and evil both being subsets of God or divinity or divine higher consciousness. That there is the state of total energy, which is total awareness or infinity, or having all of the timelines and probabilities and possibilities overlapping and with no loss of energy, like a perpetual motion machine, a circuit that keeps going and going and going. And then there is the polar opposite to that, which would be entropy, or total loss of energy. And this is also a very special and divine, holy format to find oneself in, because you achieve unity consciousness when you lose all of your energy. So in the same way that you can achieve infinity or divine union by having all of the energy and consciousness in the world available to you, you can also achieve unity and divine union with the totality consciousness by losing all of your energy and going into a totally entropic state, being totally cold, like 0 degrees Kelvin, having absolutely no more movement to the molecules or atoms of your being. And in physics, when that happens, that forms a substance called a Bose-Einstein condensate, which is denser than physical substance density that we know as the physical solid world. And atoms do interesting things at that level of coldness. They all smear on top of one another, and they begin to act as if they are one thing. So matter starts to act very differently when you take away all of the energy from it. And this is part of Einstein's whole thing. He gave us more freedom and more latitude in understanding that consciousness or awareness actually affects matter, that just the act of perception or observation collapses waveforms and affects the material world. And it also affects timeline. But then Einstein gave some inherent limitations with his thought processes that involved the limitation of the speed of light and also the inherent dualistic opposition of matter and energy. And the flying rainbow lasagna, because I like to make these little time capsules that you can get everything you need out of one capsule. On this episode, I now talk about the flying rainbow lasagna. This is my contribution to the cosmic symphony, or to the interdimensional vibratory language of color, line, movement, form, shape, texture, and tone. If I sound like I have a little bit of a cold today, I do. It's just that time of year, I guess. So I'm getting plenty of sunshine out here. There is this language that is the language that we speak with people that don't flap their moving mouth parts. And some people call it sacred geometry, but that is not an apt descriptor, because the word geometry comes from geo and metric, and that means geo is earth and metric is measure. We're measuring the earth. It's from ancient Egypt, when they developed a system of measuring the earth after the yearly flooding of the Nile, would obliterate their lines from last year. They had to be sure to apportion the farmland in an equal way so everyone would get their equal, fair amount. So geometry was created. But we are speaking now about something that is a system of measurement or common ground language, sharing of ideas with beings that aren't on Earth or don't live in an earthly format or don't even have a solid third-dimensional physical body. How can we effectively speak with and interact with individuals or societies that are made of consciousnesses that don't live in the same realm or that might travel at a vastly different rate? And in the end, that's what all of this is. We are submerged in a sea of consciousness. All of the consciousness is you. There's nothing here that's not you. It's all you, but it's you moving at a vastly different rate and coming from vastly different directions. So even this idea of evil or entropic beings, and when I say evil, I'm not a biblical literalist. So I'll just shout out, I'm not a biblical literalist, and, I consider myself a Christian and wear a cross in this symbolic gesture of reclaiming it from the people that have told a very twisted story and called it Christianity. That I'm really talking about having a connection to Christ consciousness through the aperture of awareness that resides on each one of our foreheads. That Christ consciousness is not just for a select group of people on earth that call themselves Christians and go to a church and pray specific prayers on a Sunday. No, it's not like that at all. It's like saying you have an eyeball and you are cultivating your eyeball and you are using it in order to, look at the library of the cosmos. I also call that eyeball your library card of the cosmos. And it's not enough just to have the library card and be able to go into this enormous, room full of information. You also have to be guided effectively. So that's the crown chakra, and that is at the top of your head where a baby's fontanelle is up there, like the very, very top of your scalp. That these two chakras, or energy centers on your body, have an interpenetrating relationship where the crown chakra is your connection to the source or the emanation of all consciousness, and it's where we came from. It's like where you plug into the wall to get your energy or where you get your gas for your car. And so that's why I'm sitting out here plugging into the stellar network. I do this with sun gazing activities. I don't physically stare at the sun with my physical eyes. I usually use a little hat or something to shade my physical eyes and my, face and everything so I don't get a sunburn. But I use my non-physical aperture of awareness, the Christ chakra that is in the center of my forehead, and I align that, there's a bird flying by overhead, with, apologies for all the background noise, the stellar network, because we're here in this symphony of consciousness. So really, these beautiful natural sounds that you hear around me, the crickets and the birds, they're all singing the same song in the beautiful cosmic symphony. And the great conductor, this is the one who created the stellar network, the one who created the vibratory apparatus that we are residing within. And that's what I like to say. We are in this cosmic symphony, this vibratory apparatus. And each one of us has an instrument that's vibrating. That's your own individual body. So my body is vibrating in a unique pattern that I have named the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And I invented this pattern spontaneously as part of the process or experience of walking into this body. So I say I'm a galactic walk-in. The previous occupant of this body died. And it wasn't a natural death. She actually was targeted and murdered with like a psychic attack or a targeted energy weapon. And I've spoken about this a lot in the past. And I used to just simply say by negative entities. Because when I first came here to Earth, this is like in 2001, so I've been here 15 years or so. When I started to tell people, I'm a dead person. I was killed. I was attacked by Satan and I was attacked by demons. They would look at me like I was literally insane. So I learned that I couldn't use those vocabulary words. So when I recorded my videos, I would say that I was attacked by negative entities or occupiers of the interstices. And that's why I've been so neutral in my language and my descriptions, and also trying to get away from biblical literalism. It's a very emotionally loaded term to say demon or angel, but occupier of the interstice, I think that is accurate in describing them. And also, yes, they are self-serving or malevolent. So these beings actually intended to hijack or completely take over the body of the person who used to be here. And what happened was that attack was fought off, but it caused a lot of neurological damage, and the damage was so extensive that there would not have been consciousness in this body. Like, the person who used to live in this body was literally killed. That ego was unmade and destroyed, because when your brain is disarranged at that level, it can no longer contain consciousness. And I watched that consciousness just be destroyed. But there was still the core of my awareness, like that core of a presence of, like, a sense of self being there, even though it was not the ego. And that sense of self is my abstract, extraterrestrial, galactic presence. And what I did was, I made the flying rainbow lasagna shape with the genetic structure of this body. I made this instrument play a new song. And playing that new song was the key, or the solution, to this body not dying. Because the body would have simply died because, its owner-operator was killed. Like, that's what happens when the owner-operator of the body is killed. Then the individual cells, it's like a corporation that no longer has its CEO. There's no one making the decisions and making things happen, and so everything devolves, and after a little while everything falls apart, and decomposition happens. So there was a transitionary time, like the flying rainbow lasagna did not transform all of the cells of this body instantaneously. There was a time of almost like 18 months or a couple of years of transitioning. And during that time, a force field held my body together so that it was not disarranged into a pile of goo. And that force field like that came instantaneously, when this body was killed and when the flying rainbow lasagna happened. And it was a force field of grace. Sometimes call it like God's grace, really a divine netting that held all of the cells together so that they could learn to do this new dance, so that the body wouldn't physically die in transition. And then it also took many years in order to, let's say, rewire the neurology or really restructure everything, because there was so much, consciousness damage, mental damage, that I did not originally have numerical literacy when I came into this body. I couldn't recognize numbers or do basic arithmetic or subtraction, and my eyesight had changed a lot, and the world was very blurry, and I also was not articulate as I am now, being able to describe my experiences with words. So I drew a lot of pictures, and I drew a lot of diagrams, and just drew pretty much all day long when I first came into this body, in order to have an activity that would help me to organize and structure and understand and apprehend what was going on around me. So I used visual artwork in order to do that, and just filled up notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of these repetitive patterned drawings. And so I tell you, if you ever see a little kid, like a 2-year-old, like a toddler, and they seem to be coloring away furiously, like with a crayon, like making what look like scribbles to you, that kid is hard at work organizing their neurology. That they're not just drawing spaghetti, they are actually learning to become organized on an interior level. And I had to go through that process, just like, a little kid when you first come here. Chronologically, I was an adult, but I had to go through these processes of internal organization. And over the course of many years, I learned how to do math in my own way that involves basically visualizing circles coming together and packets of 10 and shapes almost like the Tetris old video game coming together. That was how I learned in order to do math and function in this world. And it was also the genesis for the artwork that you see. If you go to you can check out my artwork at my website, flyingrainbowlasagna.com. And that's lasagna with an E on the end. And you can there's different options. Click on the art tab, and you can see there's both still shots and videos that you can see of the details, because they're pretty large pieces, and I paint details down to less than a 1/16 of an inch. And all of the painting, everything that's there in the painting, it's there intentionally. So I painted them for a purpose. They are like examples of this higher dimensional language, this language of color, line, shape, form, movement, texture, and tone. And so each one of those panels is not just something that is decorative. It is actually a communication in this otherworldly language. And the idea is that humans in the flesh can be learning this neutral language that you can use to talk with beings that aren't in the flesh and that are in a very different format. And part of that is the birth of a new dimension, like preparing for coming together with otherworldly dimensions. So the flying rainbow lasagna and all this energy versus entropy, we're resolving duality by understanding that these two polar opposites are actually part of one total whole. And someone recently, when I showed them the flying rainbow lasagna, they said, it looks just like one of those torus shapes turned inside out. And I said, I want to hug you through the computer screen because that's exactly right. It's totally beautiful perception that if you took a torus or a donut shape and you essentially turned it inside out by placing it in the next highest dimension and you gained an additional degree of freedom, you would have the flying rainbow lasagna. And this is an important, shape, an important concept because it allows you to communicate past and future, or interior and exterior, anything that's been separated by a membrane, like yourself. Your ego is the narrative structure that is like a membrane or a cell membrane, like a wall, that makes a distinction between you as opposed to the rest of humanity and your context. But the truth is you're heavily embedded within your context. Now, you can't live here on Earth without context. You need air. I'm breathing air right now. Air is your context. It flows all inside of your lungs and your bloodstream, and you also have food and the molecular structure and energy transference between what is inside of your metabolism and what is outside of your metabolism. So once you begin to break down that narrative structure of it's me versus the world, and you begin to understand that you are a part of the world, not separate from it, and that it's necessary to collaborate with the rest of the world, you are then ready to get to the next level of achievement, or the next level of experience, or the next level of the video game. And the flying rainbow lasagna helps each one of us to transcend those self-imposed limitations. So there's the limitation that matter versus energy. Like I said, that Einstein gave us that equation that sets up the duality relationship of matter versus energy. And the truth is these are two phenomena that are intertwined and that have an impact on one another. Just like matter and consciousness have an impact on one another. Yes, so matter and consciousness have an impact on one another. So science is only beginning to explore this with the concept of like the mind-body connection and the connection of consciousness affecting subatomic particles. So science will recognize, for example, that your consciousness can affect an electron. Whether you observe it or whether you don't observe it affects the behavior of that electron. And they've done some experiments exploring this idea. But science is not prepared at this moment to go all the way, to go whole hog or fully immersive, jump right in, and really recognize that your consciousness is absolutely affecting and creating reality, your divine miniature creator, just like the creator of the stellar network and consciousness itself, that the action of perception is a creative action. And this is so important because there are many negative entities that exist right now that are trying to hijack your own natural powers of creation. By this I mean perception. So creation is not just your ability to make a baby, to physically procreate the next generation. And creation is not just the capacity to make new cells, like you're constantly losing your skin cells and you have to make new skin cells or something like that, or bones or whatever. It's not just cellular regeneration. That the creative process is also a consciousness process that we are all constantly doing every minute of the day when we look around, when we perceive reality. We are creating a narrative story. This is the world that I'm in. This is what I'm looking at. I'm taking the abstract, uncollapsed waveforms, running them through my 5 physical senses, and coming up with a valid story that we all call reality. So it's not just science and the objective materialist viewpoint that has programmed into you a basic disempowerment of saying that your mind does not control reality. There are also other like folk legends and things like that, and phrases such as, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. This is the idea of saying that your imagination is useless or worthless, that it doesn't actually have an impact on reality. But in truth, your imagination has a huge, profound impact on reality. So your imagination is part of that higher faculty that I was describing earlier. Your forehead, where your Christ chakra, where that aperture resides, is part of your imagination. And I said that you're supposed to have like a library card so you can access all of this information, and then a librarian. That's the crown chakra at the top, where you connect to the stellar network of consciousness. And the librarian tells you, you should read this book, you should learn about this. Then when you're done with that, then you should learn about this. And it's not really impeccable or responsible to be a teacher or, to learn about things in a way that is haphazard. Like if first you read page 77 of a book and then switched to page 5 and then switched to page 135, getting a very distorted view of what that book is actually trying to speak about. And when people activate their forehead chakra, but without connecting to that crown chakra, they often make they make deep mistakes that are all about how they interpret the information that is being presented to them. And you can tell a lie with a factual truth. Like I can say to you something like, I am bringing you a sandwich, and that is truth. But I might be referring to a sandwich that I'm going to bring to you in 5 years or 13 billion years. And if I say I'm going to bring you a sandwich and you are presuming, that means right now that I am in a sense lying to you by saying something to you that is truthful, but only over a very, very dilated time scale. And this is what I find is happening for many people when they begin to awaken their energy. Energy in the Far East, it was called the Kundalini. This is the energy pathway that is from your spine going up to the roof of crown of your head, through the roof of your mouth and out through the top of your head. And this is how you reconnect from your earthly level to the stellar network. And I know that this has been spoken about in mystical terms, like that it's only for special people, that you have to have great responsibility and do all sorts of preparation work before you do this. I mean, yes, that is truthful. However, I would like to say it's like the capacity to run. Everybody should be able to run. Like if you have a healthy body, you should be able to walk, and you should be able to jump, and you should be able to run. So having a healthy non-physical body includes the capacity to raise your energy from the base of your spine all the way up to the crown of your head, and to connect again to the source of energy that emanated you. And just like running, this is something that should be done with proper preparation. You should stretch and you should train, and you should do it wearing the right running shoes and in the right place where you're going to run, on a nice grassy surface or something like that, or instead of, run in some place where it's not appropriate to run. So this is all about reconnecting your earthly, mundane consciousness to the stellar network. It is a totally appropriate thing to do. It is highly encouraged. However, if you only connect part of the way, that leaves your consciousness in a very vulnerable state. Checking out all sorts of books from the consciousness library, but reading everything in the wrong order, and possibly misinterpreting what's going on, and building for yourself a non-truthful story or narrative structure based on these brief glimpses. And I see that happening a lot with people that begin to awaken their inner eye, and then they look around and they do not get the comprehensive total teaching and make misinterpretations based upon those partial views. So the best thing to do, the most impeccable thing to do, is reserve any conclusions until you actually see the abstract truth, until you actually connect. And the difference between these two experiences, seeing on the anthropomorphic level, which is, seeing just through your forehead chakra, You're interpreting everything through the human filter, and everything is through the understanding of a person that has one face and two arms and two legs. But when you get up to the next level of perception, you are perceiving on the level of pure abstraction. This is abstract energy that is not yet interpreted through your anthropomorphic filter. It's like seeing the code upon which the molecules of reality and the events of reality are arranged. And there's much less room for interpretation. There's much less room for, emotional reactivity. And it's when you find out the true story behind things, beyond the levels of misinterpretation that happen at the level of, the human level. And, you don't simply have to die and then have your life review in order to reach these levels of consciousness. That I understand that is one of the myths of this time and place, that you die, you get to have your life review, and then you finally get to see, all the mistakes you made and all the things you should have done. No, you're actually supposed to have that level of perception while you are here. That is what I'm talking about, being able to see out through the windshield of your car, your vehicle, as you go through time, and not only look into the past. Flying Rainbow Lasagna allows you to transcend whatever obstacles are in the road, whatever things that are in your pathway that you cannot get through directly, you can now jump up and over. So there's this little ant that is literally walking on the armrest of my chair over here. And this little ant, if it wants to get from this area of the armchair all the way down to over here, it has to walk in a big, long, straight line. But it's walking on this little blanket. What I can do is actually pick up these two folds of the blanket and bring them together. And by doing so, I can take that little ant and make its journey much, much shorter. I can do that also with your consciousness in time by taking the Flying Rainbow Lasagna and using it to reweave that fabric of space and time, to, let's say, fold it and twist it and morph it without actually cutting it. You're not actually allowed to cut it. That's like some of these dark magicians that are killing people, twisting, distorting the time field, doing all sorts of naughty things. That's not what you're supposed to do. The time field is a living thing, like an organism, and it's also a set of rules. And it's also like musical composition or performance. And when you are part of the time field, you want to be a good musician and play the right notes at the right time, and that's how you help keep the music alive. There are right now in the time field a lot of crappy musicians. It's a big, long story about how they got there. I have a whole webinar, a whole recorded series of lessons all about it. You can check it out. If you go to flyingrainbowlasagna.com, you can also go to my university. It's called Flying Rainbow Lasagna University, where I've got two basic courses. One is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, and that's talking all about the things that I speak about here. But on the radio, one of my hands is tied behind my back. Can't actually draw pictures for you. And a lot of this is visual information, and I really perceive it mostly in a visual sense, even though within the past, let's say 5 or 7 years, I've really been hearing it also as auditory inspiration, and I've been learning music and applying this to the piano keyboard and, musical literacy, not just numerical literacy. But for the most part, I like to share these concepts as diagrams so that you can really get a sense of what the time structure is like. And so I have a whole series of recorded lessons there on interactive whiteboards where I really think it helps you to visualize what is going on. And sometimes people say to me, Aurora, you keep saying the same things. How do we actually transform into a Flying Rainbow Lasagna? And the answer is, it is so much easier for me to answer that question using animations and sculptures and recorded videos than it is for me to do it just on the radio, that I pretty much have to say, please check out my sculptures, animations, and recorded videos. And also, the idea that we are using our imaginations, which is like an actual area of your higher faculties, this area on your forehead, that is part of your ability to visualize or to envision that which does not exist in reality. It's what makes you different from many other organisms that exist. These are beautiful, intelligent organisms, but they don't have that creative capacity, and they don't have that capacity to visualize something. And when I say, if you do something like the Merkaba, that means light body vessel. This is the visualization of two interpenetrating star tetrahedra. You are using your imagination, the paintbrush of your mind, to paint that structure around your physical body. And I do the same thing with the flying rainbow lasagna. It's an actual verb. I don't just talk about it. I vibrate the genetic strings of this body and make a song and a dance routine called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So it's my own unique dance. It's something that I invented, but I don't make it my proprietary dance. I actually made a concerted effort. I made a conscious choice. I wanted to share it with everyone. That I had a choice in coming into this body and being a walk-in and making the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. I could have chosen just to keep it for myself. And then I would have been the only person that could do this with their genes. And yes, I would have had an expanded sense of perception and additional degrees of freedom, but no one else would have. And I really made a choice that did not sound like very much fun. I want to be in a band with lots of other rather wonderful musicians. I would like to be playing this musical, cosmic symphony with wonderful other musicians, because it's so much more fun to jam and improvise and bounce notes off of you and have you bounce notes off of me than it is to simply create in a vacuum. That's the whole point. So I am here as a Flying Rainbow Lasagna, the first Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and I offer this concept of how to move your genetic material in this shape or format as open source code for your DNA. Open source code. This is like the computer system Linux. It's an operating system that you don't have to pay for. You have to pay for your Apple operating system or your Microsoft Windows operating system, but Linux is offered free. And the creators of it, they said, we give this to anyone who wants to use it. Download it, do whatever you want with it, but give us the credit and include us in your future projects. So if you're making some wonderful outgrowth of Linux, we'd like to be a part of it. And I'm not an expert on computers. I'm just using that as an example. That's what the open source movement is all about. And I'm adopting their techniques because I could have said, I'm going to patent the lasagna. And I'm going to say, if anybody wants to use the lasagna in any way, you're going to have to pay me like a monthly subscription or, buy it like you buy a magazine or something like that. And I clearly have not been doing that. I've been trying to share this concept broadly as possible to get people to hear about it, know about it, and think about it. It's for your genetic code. And it's not just for DNA using organisms. Like the Earth is an organism. She has creatures on her that use DNA. There are also other creatures that do not use DNA, like a crystalline structure, a crystal. That being is alive, it houses consciousness, and it can grow, and it can react to its environment, but it does not have DNA. But the planet herself has a magnetosphere that is in this donut shape, or toroidal structure. And that planetary structure can be transformed or turned inside out by vibrating in a higher dimensional context and become the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And this is going on right now. This is what the birth of a new dimension is. Performing this energetic maneuver, not just on our planet, but in our entire cosmos, is joining together matter and energy. These are no longer going to be two divergent realms. That was a fiction. It was a fiction that was upheld for a very long time, that everyone said, look, this is real, this is true, but it's not real and true. And what is real and true is that we are in a continuum, like a seamless continuum of consciousness and energy. And that when some of that energy is put together and smushed together and made more dense, it becomes matter. And when it is not smushed together and made dense, it is energy. And now we can look at the world as a fabric of energy and matter and consciousness or awareness. That I said earlier, science gave us some more freedom with Einstein. Like the idea that the double slit experiment, you're consciously affecting the quantum world. But science does not give you the full freedom to say, with your mind and with your imagination, you are literally creating reality. Because science is like, no, objective materialism. Like, the world is still there even when you close your eyes, and the grass is still green. You're not just making it green. And if you make this experiment, it's not just being a good experiment and fulfilling your expectations. It's an experiment that is confirming your idea of reality that exists as an objective state, like, beyond you. That is a version of reality that is being upheld by the imagination apparatus of that scientific creature. I have to get into this a little bit, the idea of dark magic. Dark magic, this is something that is now on many more people's radar than it used to be. So, I used to say, I was attacked by negative entities. This is what killed the former occupant of this body. What's the truth is, satanic beings attacked the former occupant of this body. And when I say satanic, I'm referring to a particular space race, not just biblical literalism like a being named Satan in the Christian Bible. I'm referring to a group of beings that lives, in the non-terrestrial world off of Earth, and that uses technology. And the type of technology, when I define it as satanic, I mean literally, it distorts the time field, like cutting that fabric of space and time, cutting threads that should be nice and long and fitting together and, tied together. And it siphons off energy and distorts the energy of the time field. And it distorts consciousness, and it hijacks DNA. So DNA, when your DNA is dancing and vibrating like a beautiful string, like you're a beautiful instrument or a beautiful ballerina, you are tying together one moment to the next moment. This is how you transfer consciousness from your body of 12-14 into your body of 12-15, and then on into your body of 12-16, and then in continuity until your death, until you hit the membrane of death, right? That is a genetic maneuver. No, science says your genes just tell you what the shape of your nose is and whether you have certain diseases. No, your genes actually help you to leapfrog from body to body, from the train car of this moment to the next train car of the next moment to the next train car of the next moment. And that's why when consciousness invaders came to our planet between 10 and 20,000 years ago, like the most profound and the worst thing that they could do was corrupt the genes, corrupt that genetic dance. Oh, so way back earlier in this broadcast, I was saying the sophisticated worldwide antediluvian culture known as Atlantis. There are vestigial remnants of those beings that kept themselves behind a psychic shield, like before the infection could take over their minds. And those are known as the ascended masters of Agartha or Shangri-La. Please do not misinterpret this with the idea that there is a portal in Antarctica that evil beings, like Nazis or violent evil beings, are going in and out of. That is not Agartha. That is not inner Earth. So this vestigial remain of Atlantis is a place that you can only get to by matching the frequency of your consciousness with the structure of that reality. You have to be an ascended master in order to go to that world. It's like saying you have to be a really, really good musician in the band in order to get into advanced jazz band, where they play the hard chords that you have to really study about in order to know. And they have weird time signatures and all sorts of things that you don't know about. So the ascended masters are truly benevolent, truly impeccable, literal masters. And they are not the beings that are mostly being channeled on blogs and written about people when they say, so-and-so ascended master spoke through me. It is very unlikely. That is much more likely that imposters in the fourth dimensional astral realm are pretending to be an ascended master. They're holding up a mask. They're saying, listen to us. We are benevolent creatures. But what they're really doing is inhibiting you in your free flow of consciousness and inhibiting your music that you're supposed to be creating. So each one of us has our own unique genes, and you're supposed to make your own unique music and your own unique thought structure. It is not impeccable for me, if I were an art teacher or a music or a dance teacher, to make you into a carbon copy exactly like me. and say you have to dance exactly like me. Your paintings must be exact replicas of what my art is, otherwise it cannot be defined as art. No, of course not. That would be like the worst art or music teacher in the world. The best teachers unlock your own inner artist. They give you techniques and tools, and they say, now apply those techniques and tools in your own unique way. And I don't want to have everyone else in lockstep formation, like some kind of conformity party. Everybody is pretending to be like Flying Rainbow Lasagna or like me. No, I want each person to innovate and be their own unique version of themselves. And your fingerprints and your genetic structure and your body are all unique to you. And who you are in the time field is all unique to you. And so in this symphony, some people play the piccolo, high, lovely notes like this. My voice sounds terrible today. Sorry, because I have this little cold. And some people are like the kettle drum with the deep, dark sounds. And that's the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to all have your own unique, energetic signature. And you know what you're supposed to play because you connect through the crown, through your own top of your head to the stellar network. That's the great composer. The great composer tells you what notes to play and to play on the beat. And this is how we get to be good musicians. You're a good musician when you're alive. You have a physical body, and your physical body is conforming to these natural patterns. You're playing the music known as life. The ascended masters play that music so well that they will never die. They are experts in advanced jazz band. And if you want to get into advanced jazz band, you have to study up. A lot of these ascended masters, they came from the time before our genes were corrupted. We are now trying to reformat our genes into that structure again. But I like to say, you can't just go back. You can't just, try to rewind. We have to innovate a new way to do that. And my innovation is the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. This shape allows you to restructure your genes. Like a pencil with an eraser. You can take what is there, erase out what you don't want, draw in what you do want. You have to take radical self-responsibility in order to do this. You can't say, it ain't my fault, because you are taking responsibility. So in my artwork, I can't say when I show my artwork to someone, it ain't my fault. This thing is a color, this over here, this is green, that ain't my fault. No, I actually have to take responsibility and say, I made this green, I did it on purpose, and I made this part over here purple, and I did that on purpose. And I made this shape, and I made this texture, all on purpose. So we begin with our bodies. Your body is your primary artistic expression here in this time and place. And radical self-responsibility means that we begin to restructure our body, and we say, I take responsibility. It doesn't matter what my ancestors gave me in terms of limitations. This is getting rid of all those pre-programmed limitations and expectations so that you can achieve health and vitality. Get rid of the limitation that says you have to die. Get rid of the limitation that says you have to cellularly age and become decrepit and be a bent-over person at age 80, like scoliosis, and walk with a cane. No. And it doesn't matter if your ancestors aged that way. You can age differently. It doesn't matter if your ancestors had a disease like diabetes or cancer. You can age differently. So now you start to say, well, what did they do with their bodies? What did they do with their minds? How did they act in the time field? Were they all athletes of the mind? Were they all doing their Flying Rainbow Lasagna meditations and arabesques in the time field? And when I say that, every day, something? I sit here, I connect with the sun. If it's possible to do it in a physical, beautiful, sunny day, I do it. If not, I sit quietly, on a comfortable couch, and I envision the sun, and I dance with my genes. And this is profound because all of our genetic material is connected. Just like in a symphony, if you are holding a violin, and everyone else is playing their instruments, their violins, strumming their guitars, playing their pianos, even if you're not touching the strings of your violin, your own instrument is vibrating because you are picking up the vibrations of the symphony around you. And then there is the responsibility of your own emanations. What notes are you supposed to play? None of this is accidental. When you begin to activate your Christ chakra and your crown chakra, then you begin to become literate Like you start to see and perceive the musical score of the cosmos. You know what note is coming next. You don't have to guess. Is it a C? Is it an F sharp? Is it a D flat? You can sense what is coming next. So people who are, artists and musicians, for the most part, they are individualists, and they say, I am working like from my inner prompting. Although that's a generalization. I mean, of course, there are artists who paint for the market or who paint on commission, and there are musicians who are just, like classical musicians who simply play what is the musical score and they don't innovate. But I'm trying to think of examples in this time of place of people who follow their own innate desires and their own inner boss that tells them what to do and when to do it. And around here, mostly it's artists and musicians or writers or people like that do not have an externalized boss or an externalized schedule that tells them when it is time to create or when it is time to emit. Like in my own personal life, I have my own inner creativity that tells me what I need to paint and when I need to paint it, and I paint to my own standards, and that is part of my definition of being an artist. Like, you don't have an external boss, you have an internal boss, and you know that you did a good job when your internal boss tells you good job, not when the world around you tells you good job by either giving you money or a pat on the back or notoriety or fame or anything like that, because I think it's quite clear that we live in a distorted time field right now. These malevolent beings, the satanic beings, they literally hijack the creative life force energy of Earth, of Earth's inhabitants, people like you and me, and they use it to cut the time field, distort the time stream, siphon off energy, and use it to make events happen that would not otherwise happen. Like, people are achieving success in this time and place who otherwise would not be successful at all, not only in arts and in music, but also in business and in politics. That is basically, if you look at the world, you understand how malevolent beings or self-serving beings can be hugely successful to the point of being a millionaire or a billionaire. The answer is because of the distortion of the time field. That really, when the time field is not distorted, what you send out comes back to you instantaneously, and intention matters. And if you have the intention to be greedy or to harm others or to only serve yourself, all of that reflects back to you. But we're in a distorted funhouse where intentions and what you send out, sometimes they are not immediately sent back to you, and sometimes they are deferred, like there is a time delay, and sometimes they are sent back in a diminished sense, and entropically they are some energy is lost in the process. And this means that you could be a good person sending out all sorts of unconditional love and not be receiving back what you have sent out because of entropy, or because that energy got distorted and sent to someone else. It's a distorted system. It's not a fair system. That is what I am here to tell you, that divinity actually set up a fair system. That's what the stellar network is. That's what this pure, abstract, empirical world of consciousness is. And that at the level of anthropomorphic interpretation, the human operating system, I call it a hacked operating system, the level of the human mind, that is where the distortion takes place. Animals do not have this same level of distortion. And I'm not talking about domesticated animals. Brief pause. Just letting my neighbor pull out of their driveway. Domesticated animals have had their genetic code changed and transformed. And so they might be more perceiving the same hacks or having the same difficulties that humans have. But I'm speaking about animals that have never been domesticated or had their perception altered or been genetically modified in any way. That the human imagination or the human creative capacity has been hijacked and distorted, that this is part of harming the time field. We're supposed to be musicians that are helping the time field, playing the right note, playing on the beat. And because of this hacked human operating system, that it is very difficult to do so. And when humans come here as tiny infants, for about the first year of their life, they're still connected to the divine, and they haven't fully installed and downloaded that operating system. But as soon as they start to get, pretty much their language skills. That is the integration into this human social network that then begins to teach all of these artificial separations, these fictions, the objective materialist viewpoint, and all of that is disempowering. That really so much of what is called growing up or achieving maturity and adulthood in this time and place is the loss of imagination or the harnessing of that imaginative capacity. Little children are very imaginative and they have what is called a magical viewpoint, and that as humans grow older, that capacity to imagine and to believe in experiences or events that cannot be explained through rational or, objective materialist viewpoint, that capacity fades. And that capacity is part of your magic. It is part of how we create reality around us. So it is a lie. It is a lie to say that you are not a magical being. You are totally a magical being. When you are looking around with your eyesight and hearing with your ears and creating this world, you are performing a magical act. And the beings who are dark magicians, they are aware of the magical act. They are aware of the activity, but they want to disempower you by saying that you're not actually doing it. And they want to take that tool away from you. So the whole idea is flying rainbow lasagna. This is the tool for your own self-empowerment. Please learn about it, take this shape, apply it to your own genetic structure, and reconnect from the crown of your own body to the stellar network. You can't go wrong with this. It's beyond gurus, it's beyond misinterpretation, it's beyond being misguided, it's beyond any of those pitfalls and traps. That's why I say to do this. I say, do not listen to me, Aurora. Take the flying rainbow lasagna, apply it to your own genetic code, and tune in to the library and read all of these books for yourself. I learned all of these things by directly connecting to the sun and the stellar network. And when you look at my artwork, the paintings that I paint, I make those images because that's what I saw when I connected to the stellar network. And in order for you to be the artist of your own world, you need to connect to the stellar network and get all of that broadcast directly, not just downstream from me, not just secondhand from me, but you get it directly. And this is how we are now rectifying the time field and returning to that state of awareness that we had in the antediluvian worldwide sophisticated culture that is known as Atlantis. So this is a reconnection with those vestigial traces of Atlantis and the ascended masters. No longer is it like they're in their own world and we are in this world that is the world of satanic distortion. We're finally coming back together. It's like coming back together with old family members. So this is the end of this particular broadcast. We are literally giving birth to this baby, which is the new experience of reality where matter and energy are no longer falsely separated. And this means coming back together with spirit friends from far distant galaxies and with ancient humans who have been held in a state of, stasis for a very long time. So thank you very much for tuning in. Please continue to flying rainbow lasagna, and we are giving birth to this beautiful new dimension together.